I set the table with candles and my wife's good china at 1 a.m. My 15-year-old daughter had a 19-year-old climbing through her window every night. I'd known for 3 days and hadn't said a word. I know how that sounds. Let me tell you why it worked. 3 nights ago, I installed a Ring camera by our front door to catch whoever kept stealing packages. Instead, I caught something else. At 1:17 a.m., a figure climbed down from Harley's second-floor window using the oak tree we planted when she was born. I watched him drop to the ground and jog toward a car parked down the street. My hands shook as I rewound the footage. Same guy, same time, 3 nights in a row. I spent the next day doing research. His name was Zachary Vaughn, 19 years old, arrested for shoplifting last year. Fired from 3 jobs in 6 months. I found his social media profiles full of pictures taken in our high school parking lot with kids who should be studying for their SATs. Every post made my stomach turn. But I didn't confront Harley. I didn't call the cops. I had a better idea. I pull out my phone and open the Ring app, watching the live feed from the front porch camera. I angled toward the oak tree. Right on schedule. Zachary's silhouette appears in the frame at 1:18 a.m. He moves down the tree branches with practiced ease, drops the last 6 feet to the grass and walks across our lawn like he owns it. I zoom in and watch him glance back at Harley's window once before heading down the sidewalk. His car is parked 3 houses down. A rust-cold Honda with a dented bumper that belongs to his mother. According to the registration, I looked up. He climbs in and the interior light shows his face clearly for a moment before it goes dark. I set a timer on my phone for 20 minutes. That should give them enough time to feel safe and comfortable. Enough time for Harley to think she got away with it again. I look at the dining room table with its fancy setup and smile. This is going to work. The 20 minutes crawl by while I sit in the dark living room. I rehearse what I'm going to say, how I'm going to act. Cheerful, completely cheerful, like this is the most normal thing in the world. My heart pounds against my ribs, but I keep my breathing steady. When the timer goes off, I stand and head for the stairs. Each step cacks under my weight, and I don't try to be quiet anymore. I reach Harley's door and pause for just a second. Then I knock twice, loud and friendly, and push the door open without waiting. They're on her bed, both fully dressed, thank God. But they jump apart like I hit them with electricity. Harley's eyes go huge, and Zachary actually scoots backward toward the window. I keep that big smile plastered on my face and let it reach my eyes. Spread my arms wide and announce that dinner is ready downstairs. I've been waiting for them both and the food is getting cold. I gesture toward the hallway, still smiling, still acting like I just called them down for Sunday breakfast. Harley opens her mouth but nothing comes out. Her face drains of color until she looks actually sick. Zachary glances at the window and I can see him calculating if he can make it. I step further into the room and tell them the steaks are getting cold. I went to a lot of trouble tonight. They really shouldn't keep me waiting. My voice stays light and friendly, but I don't move from the doorway. After a long moment, Harley stands on shaky legs. Zachary follows, looking at the floor. I lead them downstairs. The dining room looks ridiculous at 1:30 in the morning. 2 tall candles flicker on the table between 3 play settings of Harper's good china. The stuff we only use for Thanksgiving. I spent $40 on steaks at the fancy grocery store. The overhead light is off, so just the candles light everything with a warm glow that would be romantic if this wasn't the most awkward moment of my daughter's life. I pull out a chair for Harley and she sits like she's in a dream. Zachary hovers near his chair until I gesture at it. He sits. I take my seat at the head of the table. Nobody speaks. The silence fills the room like water, heavy and thick. Can hear Zachary breathing through his mouth. Harley stares at her empty plate. The candles pop and hiss. I stand and walk to the kitchen, returning with a platter of steaks that cost more than Zachary probably makes in a week at whatever job he's between. I set one on each plate using the silver tongs Harper got as a wedding gift. They're cooked perfect, medium rare with grill marks. I add roasted potatoes and green beans to each plate like I'm serving at a nice restaurant. Then I pour cream soda into the fancy crystal glasses, the ones with the gold rim. The sound of liquid hitting glass echoes too loud. I set the bottle down and pick up my glass, holding it up like I'm about to make a toast. Instead, I ask Zachary how he likes his steak cooked. My voice comes out friendly and interested, like I'm meeting my daughter's boyfriend at a normal time under normal circumstances. Zachary mumbles something about medium while looking at his lap. His hands grip his knees under the table. Harley has gone completely still except for her chest moving with quick shallow breaths. Her face has turned bright red, the color spreading down her neck. She won't look at me or Zachary. She just stares at her plate like she's trying to make herself disappear into the floral pattern. I cut into my steak and take a bite, chewing slowly. The meat tastes like ash in my mouth, but I smile and nod like it's delicious. I ask Zachary to pass the salt. He fumbles with the shaker and nearly drops it. His hands are shaking. I let the silence stretch for another minute while I eat. Then I start asking questions in my friendliest dad voice, the one I use at parent-teacher conferences. I ask Zachary what his plans are for college. Where is he thinking of applying? What does he want to study? He shifts in his chair and says he's taking a gap year right now, just figuring things out. His voice cracks on the last word. I nod like this makes perfect sense and ask what he's been doing during his gap year. Any travel? Any work experience? I already know from my research that he dropped out of community college after 2 weeks because he stopped going to classes. Watch Harley's face as Zachary stumbles through his answer. She's listening now. Really listening, and I can see a tiny wrinkle form between her eyebrows. I move on to questions about his job. What field is he interested in? Where is he working now? Zachary admits he's between opportunities at the moment. The economy is tough. It's hard to find something that fits. I nod sympathetically and take another bite of steak. Harley's eyes flick towards Zachary and then away. That's the first hint of doubt I've seen on her face in weeks. She's always talked about him like he was some kind of rebel poet too cool for regular life. But sitting here in the candle light, he just looks like a 19-year-old kid with no job and no prospects who sneaks into high school girls' bedrooms. I ask about his car, keeping my voice casual and curious. Zachary has to admit it's his mom's car. He's saving up for his own. I ask what kind he wants to get, and he names some expensive sports car that makes Harley blink. I ask where his dad is, if his parents are still together, just making conversation. Zachary goes quiet for a long moment. He mutters something about his dad being away and changes the subject back to the car. But the damage is done. Harley is looking at him differently now, seeing him through my eyes instead of through whatever filter made him seem exciting and dangerous. She shifts away from him slightly in her chair. The spell is starting to break. I watch Zachary cut into his steak, and something about the way he does it catches my attention. He saws at the meat with his knife like he's trying to cut through wood, his grip awkward and clumsy. The knife scrapes against the plate, making a sound that sets my teeth on edge. When he finally gets a piece loose, he shoves it in his mouth and starts chewing with his lips parted. The wet smacking sounds echo in the quiet dining room loud, enough that I can hear his tongue working against the roof of his mouth. Harley glances over at him and her eyes widen slightly. She shifts in her chair, leaning away from him just an inch or two. Her shoulders tense up and she looks down at her own plate real quick. I take another bite of my steak and keep watching. Zachary reaches up to wipe his mouth, but instead of using the cloth napkin I set out beside his plate, he drags the back of his hand across his lips. Grease from the steak smears across his skin, and he wipes that hand on his jeans under the table. Then he reaches for his glass and leaves a dark fingerprint on the crystal. Another greasy print appears on the white tablecloth when he sets his hand down. Harley's jaw gets tight as she watches this happen. Her eyes fix on those fingerprints for a long moment before she looks away. I decide to keep the conversation going and ask Zachary about his interests. What does he like to do for fun? What hobbies does he have? He perks up a little bit and launches into this long rambling story about his gaming setup. He's got 3 monitors and a custom-built PC that cost him $2,000. Well, it cost his mom $2,000 for his birthday last year. He talks about frame rates and graphics cards and streaming on some platform I've never heard of. Every few words he says like, or his vocabulary seems limited to maybe 100 words that he just rearranges in different orders. Harley is listening and I can see something shifting in her expression. The dreamy look she usually gets when talking about Zachary starts to fade. She blinks a few times and glances between him and me like she's seeing him clearly for the first time. Zachary reaches across the table for the salt shaker and I watch his hand close around it. Instead of just using it and putting it back, he palms it and slides it toward his lap. The movement is smooth and practiced. Like he's done this before, like he's planning to slip it into his pocket when nobody's looking. My wife's good silver salt shaker that matches the pepper shaker her grandmother gave us. Harley sees it too because her eyes go huge. Her mouth opens slightly, and her face flushes bright red. She looks at me to see if I noticed, and I just keep that friendly smile on my face and take another bite of steak. I ask Zachary about his family. Does he have brothers or sisters? What do his parents do for work? He shifts in his seat and the salt shaker clinks against something in his lap. He tells me he's got a younger brother who's 12. His mom works at a call center doing customer service. His dad isn't around much. I ask where his dad is and Zachary gets quiet. He mumbles something about his dad being away and working on himself. The way he says it makes it sound like his dad is either in prison or rehab. Every answer reveals another piece of the picture that Harley clearly never bothered to look at before. She stopped eating completely now. Her fork sits on her plate and she's just staring at the food like she forgot what it's for. I watch her mentally going through every conversation she's had with Zachary. Every time he climbed through her window, every text message he sent. She's reviewing all of it through this new lens and not liking what she sees. Zachary picks up his knife again and goes back to sawing at his steak. He holds the knife in his fist like a little kid who never learned proper table manners. The blade scrapes and squeaks against the plate. Each cut takes him 3 or 4 tries because he can't get the angle right. The romantic filter that made him seem cool and rebellious dissolves a little more with each awkward movement. I mention casually that I saw him hanging around the high school parking lot last week. Just happened to drive by and noticed him there. I ask if he has friends who still go to the school there. His face gets defensive real quick. His eyebrows pull together and his mouth tightens. He says he just likes to visit people, sometimes catch up with friends, but the way he says it sounds wrong even to him. His voice trails off at the end and he looks down at his plate. Harley physically recoils in her chair. She leans back like she wants to put more distance between them. The idea of a 19-year-old hanging around a high school parking lot sounds exactly as creepy as it is. She won't look at him now. She keeps her eyes fixed on her plate, on the wall, on the candles, anywhere but at Zachary. Her face has gone from red to pale. Zachary leans toward her and tries to whisper something that I assume is meant to be flirty or reassuring. Something to bring back that dreamy look she used to give him. But Harley jerks away from him like he tried to touch her with something hot. She won't make eye contact. She just shakes her head slightly and scoots her chair another inch away. The spell is completely broken now. Whatever made her think this guy was worth sneaking around for has shattered into pieces. I can see it in the way she holds herself. The way she keeps glancing at the door like she wants to run. I keep my cheerful dad voice going and offer dessert. I made brownies earlier and there's ice cream in the freezer. My voice comes out bright and friendly like this is just a normal family dinner. Harley jumps in before I can finish the sentence. Her voice comes out firm and embarrassed. Nothing like the soft, dreamy tone she's been using when talking about Zachary at dinner lately. She says, Zachary really needs to leave. He has to get home. As late. Her words tumble out fast and desperate. Zachary looks confused by the sudden shift. He glances between us trying to figure out what just happened, but Harley is already standing up from the table, her napkin falling onto her chair. I stand up from the table and walk Zachary to the front door myself, keeping that same friendly smile on my face. He seems relieved to escape the awkward dinner and practically rushes through the doorway. I shake his hand and tell him it was nice to finally meet him, that he should come by any time. My voice sounds warm and welcoming, but we both know he'll never set foot in this house again. Harley follows us to the door, and I can see her gathering courage to say what needs to be said. I excuse myself and head back to the dining room, giving them a moment alone. I stand near the doorway where I can hear everything clearly without being obvious about it. Harley's voice comes through strong and steady, nothing like the uncertain tone she's been using lately. She tells him straight out that he shouldn't come back to her window or text her anymore. They're done. The words come out firm and final. No room for argument or negotiation. Zachary tries to say something, but she cuts him off. I hear the front door open and close, then silence. A few seconds pass before Harley comes back into the dining room. Her eyes look red and puffy, but she's not crying. She walks straight over to me and wraps her arms around my shoulders, holding on tight. Her voice comes out muffled against my shirt when she whispers, "Thanks, Dad." I hug her back and don't say anything because sometimes the best response is just being there. We stand like that for a minute before she pulls away and starts gathering plates from the table. I grab the serving dishes and we work together in comfortable silence, scraping food into containers and stacking dishes by the sink. The candles have burned down to little stubs, and I blow them out one by one. Harley asks if Mom knows about this whole thing, and I admit I planned it while Harper was visiting her sister. Her eyebrows go up, but she doesn't look angry, just surprised. She loads plates into the dishwasher while I put leftovers in the fridge. The clock on the microwave shows 2:30 in the morning. Harley leans against the counter and stares at the floor for a long moment. Her voice comes out quiet and embarrassed when she finally speaks. She tells me she thought Zachary was different and exciting, that he seemed cool and mysterious. But sitting there, watching him at dinner made her see him the way I must see him. A 19-year-old with no job who chews with his mouth open and tries to steal salt shakers. She sounds relieved to be saying it out loud. Like admitting the truth makes it less shameful. I tell her everyone makes mistakes and the important thing is learning from them. She nods and wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. We finish cleaning up the kitchen and she heads upstairs to bed. I stay down and wipe off the dining room table, putting the good china back in the cabinet where it belongs. The next morning, Harper comes home around 9 o'clock and finds me drinking coffee in the kitchen. I fill her in on everything while Harley is still sleeping upstairs. I tell her about catching Zachary on the Ring camera, about planning the formal dinner, about watching him reveal his true character with every awkward movement and stupid comment. Harper listens without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to understanding to something between impressed and annoyed. She admits the strategy was brilliant, but she's irritated that I didn't tell her beforehand. I explained that I needed to act fast and she was 2 hours away at her sister's house. Harper accepts this, but makes me promise to loop her in next time before I stage any elaborate interventions. We agree that the Zachary problem is solved, but the underlying trust issues aren't going anywhere. Harley felt like she needed to sneak around for a reason, and we need to figure out what that reason is. Harper suggests a family meeting to talk through everything openly. I agree, and we decide to do it this afternoon while the whole situation is still fresh. That afternoon, the three of us sit down at the same dining room table where everything went down last night. The fancy china is put away, and we're just drinking iced tea from regular glasses. Harley looks nervous but determined, sitting up straight with her hands folded on the table. Harper starts by saying, "We want to understand her perspective and we're not here to lecture or punish. We just want to listen." Harley takes a deep breath and admits she's been feeling suffocated by our rules. She says we treat her like a child when she's almost 16. Her friends have later curfews and more freedom, and she feels like we don't trust her at all. The words pour out fast like she's been holding them in for months. She tells us she knows sneaking Zachary in was wrong, but it felt like the only way to have any control over her own life. We listen without interrupting, even though I want to defend our parenting choices. When she finishes talking, Harper and I look at each other. We both recognize there's truth in what she's saying, even if we don't love hearing it. We spend the next hour negotiating new boundaries that give Harley more freedom while keeping her safe. She can stay out until 11 o'clock on weekends instead of 9 o'clock. She can have friends over with the door open instead of having to hang out in common areas only. She needs to check in by text if plans change, but we won't demand minute-by-minute updates. Harley seems genuinely surprised that we're willing to compromise. Her whole face lights up when we agree to the later curfew. Harper reminds her that these new privileges come with the expectation that she'll be honest with us. No more sneaking around or lying about where she is. Harley promises she'll do better and actually seems to mean it. We shake hands across the table like we're sealing a business deal, and everyone laughs. The tension that's been building for months feels lighter somehow. Over the next few days, I notice small changes around the house. Harley keeps her bedroom window locked at night. I check it casually when I walk past her room, and the latch is always secure. She doesn't mention Zachary, and neither do we, letting the whole incident fade naturally without making it into some big dramatic thing. She comes home right at curfew on Friday night, and texts me when she gets to her friend's house on Saturday. The new boundaries seem to be working for everyone. Harper and I talk about it one night after Harley goes to bed, and we both feel relieved that we handled it without destroying our relationship with our daughter. The formal dinner intervention could have backfired badly, but instead it gave Harley the space to see the truth for herself and make her own choice. Sometimes the best parenting means creating situations where your kids learn their own lessons instead of having wisdom forced on them. 2 weeks pass before Harley knocks on my office door one Saturday morning. She stands in the doorway twisting her hands together and asks if she can go to the school dance next Friday with some friends. Harper and I exchange a quick look across the room and we both say yes at the same time. Harley's whole face lights up and she crosses the room to hug me first, then Harper. Her arms squeeze tight around my shoulders for a few seconds before she pulls back. She hasn't hugged us like that in months. Not since before all the sneaking around started. A month slides by and the house feels different. Harley comes downstairs for dinner without being called. She tells us about her AP history project and her friend drama and her thoughts on college without us having to drag information out of her. Harper catches my eye during these conversations and I can see the relief in her expression. The tight knot that's been sitting in my chest for months starts to loosen. Harley even asks Harper for advice about what to wear to the dance, and they spend an hour going through her closet together. I hear them laughing from downstairs, and it sounds like music. One evening after dinner, Harley stays at the table while Harper and I clean up. She mentions that a boy from her AP chemistry class asked if she wanted to study together this weekend. Her voice sounds different from when she talked about Zachary, more cautious but also more genuine. She picks at her napkin while she talks and glances up at us to gauge our reaction. I rinse a plate and ask what his name is. She says Levi and that he's really smart and funny and actually cares about school. I nod and tell her that sounds nice, then go back to loading the dishwasher. Harper asks if she's going to say yes and Harley shrugs but she's smiling. The conversation ends there, and we don't push for more details. 2 weeks later, Harley asks if Levi can come over Saturday afternoon to work on their chemistry project. Harper and I agree without hesitation. Saturday arrives and I make a point of being around but not hovering. I set myself up in the living room with a book where I can see the front door. Harley paces near the window. Around 2 o'clock, the doorbell rings at 2:15 and she rushes to answer it. I hear voices in the entryway and set my book down. Levi walks into the living room behind Harley looking slightly nervous. He's tall and lanky with dark hair and glasses. He extends his hand when Harley introduces us and his handshake is firm. He makes eye contact and asks how I'm doing. We exchange a few minutes of polite conversation about school and the weather before Harley steers him toward the dining room. I notice he's carrying a proper backpack with textbooks and papers sticking out the top. They spread their materials across the table and I can hear them actually discussing chemistry concepts. Harper comes home an hour later and pokes her head in to say hello. Levi stands up and introduces himself politely. After she leaves, he sits back down and they return to their work. They finish around 5 o'clock and Levi packs up his stuff carefully. Harley walks him to the door and I follow to say goodbye. He thanks me for letting him come over and shakes my hand again before leaving. His car is a modest sedan parked right in front of our house. Harley closes the door and leans against it for a second. Her cheeks are pink and she's trying not to smile too big. She comes into the kitchen where Harper and I are starting dinner. She tells us about Levi without us even asking how they met in chemistry class last year, how he wants to study engineering, how he volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends. The difference between how she talks about Levi versus how she talked about Zachary hits me hard. When she mentions Zachary, it was all about how cool and mysterious he seemed. With Levi, she talks about actual qualities and shared interests. Harper asks if she likes him, and Harley admits she does, but she's taking it slow. We tell her that sounds smart and leave it at that. She helps us make dinner, and the whole evening feels normal and comfortable in a way it hasn't for a long time. Harper and I talk about the Levi situation that night after Harley goes upstairs. We sit at the kitchen table with cups of tea going cold between us. Harper reaches across and squeezes my hand. She says we're doing better this time around, giving Harley room to breathe while still keeping watch. I nod and mention how different this feels from the Zachary mess. We're not hovering or interrogating, just staying present and available. The dinner intervention taught us something important about letting kids figure things out on their own, instead of forcing our wisdom down their throats. Harper agrees and says she's proud of how we handled everything. We finish our tea and head upstairs feeling like we might actually know what we're doing as parents. 3 months pass and the house settles into a comfortable rhythm. Harley comes downstairs one Friday evening while Harper and I are making dinner. She hovers near the counter twisting a dish towel between her hands. She asks if Levi can take her to the movies tonight. Harper and I exchange a quick glance and I see the same thought cross both our faces. We say yes at the same time. Harley's whole face lights up, but then she waits like she's expecting conditions. I tell her she needs to be home by 10 o'clock and to text us when they get to the theater. Harper adds that she wants to know which movie they're seeing. Harley agrees to everything without complaint and pulls out her phone to text Levi right there in front of us. She thanks us 3 times before heading back upstairs to get ready. Harper leans against the counter after Harley leaves and lets out a long breath. I know exactly how she feels. The doorbell rings at 7:30 and I answer it before Harley can rush down. Levi stands on the porch looking nervous but making eye contact. He's dressed in nice jeans and a button-down shirt. I step outside and close the door partway behind me. I tell him I expect Harley by 10 o'clock, and that means walking her to the door at 10 o'clock, not pulling up at 10 o'clock. He nods quickly and promises he'll have her back on time. I ask what movie they're planning to see, and he names some action comedy that just came out. Tell him to drive safe and keep his phone on in case we need to reach them. He shakes my hand and thanks me for letting them go out. His handshake is firm and he doesn't look away when he talks. Harley comes out then wearing a nice shirt and jeans with her hair pulled back. She hugs Harper goodbye and waves at me before following Levi to his car. I watch them pull away and Harper appears beside me. We stand in the doorway together until the car turns the corner. They walk up to the front door at 9:45. I'm sitting in the living room with a book, but I've been checking my watch every few minutes for the past hour. Levi walks Harley right up to the door instead of dropping her at the curb. I open it before they can knock. Levi thanks us again for letting them go out and says goodnight to Harley before heading back to his car. Harley comes inside and I close the door behind her. Her cheeks are pink and she's trying not to smile too big. She tells us about the movie and how they got popcorn and how Levi paid even though she offered to split it. Harper asks if she had a good time and Harley nods so hard her ponytail bounces. She hugs us both goodnight and practically floats up the stairs. Harper and I look at each other and I can see the relief written all over her face. This is what normal teenage dating should look like. The next few months bring Levi around more and more. He comes over to study with Harley twice a week. He shows up for family dinners on Sundays without being asked. He always comes through the front door and always offers to help clean up after meals. Harper mentions one night that she genuinely likes him, and I realize I do too. He talks about his classes and his plans for college like a kid who actually has his life together. I notice how he explains things patiently when she gets stuck on a problem. The contrast with Zachary couldn't be more obvious. I'm washing dishes one evening when the thought hits me hard. The Zachary situation could have gone completely wrong if I'd handled it differently. If I'd yelled or threatened or forbidden Harley from seeing him, she probably would have dug in her heels and the relationship would have lasted months instead of one awkward dinner. Creating that uncomfortable formal meal gave her the space to see him clearly without me having to say a single negative word. She made her own choice and that choice stuck because it came from her, not from me forcing it. I dry my hands on the towel and look out the window at Harley and Levi sitting on the back porch talking. Sometimes the best parenting means setting up situations where your kids learn their own lessons instead of having wisdom shoved at them. Harley's next report card arrives in the mail, and I open it at the kitchen table. Her grades have jumped from mostly C's to mostly B's with 2 A's. Harper reads it over my shoulder and squeezes my arm. Harley seems more interested in family movie nights now. She asks about our days at dinner and actually listens to the answers. The house feels peaceful in a way it hasn't in over a year. The constant tension that used to hang in the air whenever Harley was around has lifted. She smiles more and argues less. Harper and I both notice how she volunteers to help with chores without being asked. The trust we rebuilt after the Zachary mess has changed everything between us. 6 months after that formal dinner intervention, Harley brings it up herself. We're all sitting in the living room watching TV when a commercial comes on. Harley mutes it and turns to me with this grin on her face. She says she still can't believe I made her sit through that dinner with Zachary. She's laughing as she talks about how mortified she felt watching him eat with his mouth open and pocket the salt shaker. Harper starts laughing too and asks what salt shaker. I explain and Harper nearly spits out her drink. Harley shakes her head and says she wanted to die right there at the table. Then she gets serious for a second and thanks me again for helping her see what was really happening. She says she needed to see Zachary in normal light instead of the mysterious bad boy glow she'd built up in her head. Harley keeps talking and admits something I didn't expect. She says she knew deep down that Zachary wasn't right for her, but she felt committed to the relationship because it was forbidden and exciting. Sneaking around made everything feel more intense and important than it actually was. Seeing him sitting at our dinner table in his wrinkled shirt making small talk broke that whole illusion completely. Without the secrecy and the thrill of breaking rules, there was nothing there. Just a 19-year-old dropout with no plans and bad table manners. She says she's glad I didn't just ground her or forbid her from seeing him because she probably would have fought back hard. Instead, I let her see the truth herself, and that made all the difference. Harper reaches over and takes Harley's hand. She tells Harley that we're proud of how she handled everything and how much she's grown from it. She mentions the better grades and the better attitude and how nice it is to have our daughter back. Harley's eyes get a little wet and she squeezes Harper's hand back. She says she knows she was difficult for a while and she's sorry for all the sneaking and lying. We tell her we understand that being 15 is hard, and sometimes you have to make mistakes to learn. The important thing is that she learned and moved forward. Harley nods and wipes her eyes. Then she unmutes the TV and we go back to watching. But the whole room feels lighter somehow. A few weeks pass and Levi brings up from one evening while they're doing homework at the kitchen table. He asks if he can take Harley and I look at Harper across the room. She nods and I tell him yes without making him wait for an answer. His face lights up and Harley grins so wide I think her cheeks might hurt. They start talking about colors and timing and Harper jumps in to help plan. Watch the three of them bent over Harley's phone looking at dress options, and feel this wave of gratitude wash over me. Those rough months with Zachary could have destroyed everything between us if I'd handled it wrong. Instead, we're standing here planning prom like a normal family. The week before prom, Harper takes Harley shopping, and they come home with bags full of dresses and shoes and makeup. Harley models each dress for us, and we help her pick the one that makes her happiest. It's a dark blue thing that matches her eyes and makes her look older than 15. Harper tears up a little, watching her twirl in front of the mirror. I realize my little girl is growing up whether I'm ready or not. Prom night arrives, and I spend the afternoon setting up the living room for pictures. Harper hangs streamers and arranges flowers while Harley gets ready upstairs. I can hear music playing and Harper laughing as she helps with hair and makeup. The doorbell rings at 6:30, and I open it to find Levi standing there in a suit holding a plastic container with a sore inside. He looks nervous but excited and shakes my hand. When I let him in, I tell him Harley will be down in a minute, and he waits by the stairs fidgeting with his tie. Harper comes down first with her phone ready, and then Harley appears at the top of the stairs. Levi's whole face changes when he sees her, and I remember feeling that way about Harper once. Still do sometimes. They pose for what feels like 100 pictures while Harper directs them around the living room. I stand back and watch Levi pin the corsage on Harley's dress with shaking hands. She's beaming at him and he's being so careful not to stick her with the pin. When they're finally ready to leave, I walk them to the door and tell Levi to have her home by midnight. He promises he will and thanks us again for letting him take her. I shake his hand one more time and Harper hugs Harley goodbye. We stand in the doorway watching his car pull away and Harper leans against my shoulder. She whispers that we did good and I squeeze her hand. We spend the evening trying to watch TV, but mostly checking our phones every few minutes. Harper makes popcorn we don't eat and I flip through channels without really watching anything. At 11:30, I start watching the driveway through the front window. Harper tells me to relax, but she's doing the same thing from the kitchen. At 11:45, headlights turn into our driveway and I'm at the door before they can get out of the car. Levi walks Harley right up to the porch and she's practically glowing. Her hair is messier than when she left and her cheeks are flushed, but she looks happy. She hugs me tight and then rushes inside to tell Harper everything. Levi waves goodnight and heads back to his car. I watch him drive away before going inside. Harley talks for 20 minutes straight about the dance and the music and the decorations. She shows us pictures on her phone of her and her friends and describes the dinner they had before. Harper asks questions and I mostly just listen to her voice bubbling over with excitement. When she finally heads upstairs, she hugs us both again and thanks us for letting her go. I hear her bedroom door close and then silence. No window opening, no footsteps on the roof, just a normal teenage girl going to bed after prom. That evening, Harper and I sit on the back porch after Harley goes to bed. I tell her about the counselor's call and she gets this look on her face like she might cry. She says she was so scared we were going to lose Harley during those months with Zachary. The lying and sneaking around felt like watching our daughter slip away from us. But that one weird dinner intervention changed everything. Harper reaches over and takes my hand. She says we got lucky that it worked and I have to agree. Harley had dug her heels in and refused to see Zachary clearly. We'd probably still be fighting. Instead, she made her own choice and it stuck because it came from her. We talk about keeping the lines of communication open as she gets older. No more assuming we know what's best without listening to her side. Harper mentions the parenting workshop we've been attending and how much it's helped us understand teenage behavior. I nod and squeeze her hand. We sit there in comfortable silence watching fireflies blink in the yard. The house feels peaceful in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. Sunday afternoon, Levi shows up for family dinner looking nervous. He brings flowers for Harper and a bottle of wine for me. Even though he's not old enough to drink it himself, Harper puts the flowers in a vase and thanks him while I set the wine aside for later. We all sit down at the dining room table, and I can't help thinking about that awkward meal with Zachary 6 months ago. The contrast couldn't be more obvious. Levi uses his napkin and keeps his elbows off the table. He asks Harper about her work and listens when she answers. He compliments the food and offers to help clear plates when we're done eating. Harley watches him with this soft expression that tells me she sees the difference too. After dinner, Levi insists on helping with dishes, even though we tell him he's a guest. He and Harley stand at the sink washing and drying while Harper and I put leftovers away. They're laughing about something that happened at the school and bumping shoulders while they work. It's such a normal teenage relationship moment that I feel grateful all over again. My sister Lucia stops by the following weekend to drop off some books she borrowed. She meets Levi in the driveway as he's arriving to study with Harley. I introduce them and watch Lucia size him up with that protective aunt look she gets. Levi shakes her hand and makes polite conversation before heading inside with Harley. Lucia follows me into the kitchen and immediately starts grilling me about him. I tell her the whole story about Zachary and the formal dinner and how Levi is basically the opposite of everything that was wrong with that situation. She laughs so hard she nearly spills her coffee. She tells me the dinner intervention should be in a parenting handbook somewhere. Then she gets serious and says, "We clearly did something right because Harley seems genuinely happy." She hugs me before leaving and tells me to keep being a good dad. As spring turns into summer, Harley starts talking about getting a job. She wants to work at the ice cream shop downtown and save money for college. She asks our advice about filling out the application and what to say in an interview. Harper helps her pick out an outfit and I give her tips about making eye contact and speaking clearly. She gets hired within a week and comes home excited to tell us. Her first shift is the following Saturday, and she's nervous but ready. Watching her take these steps toward independence makes me realize she's not a little kid anymore. She's becoming a young adult who makes good choices and asks for help when she needs it. One evening I walk through the dining room and find Harley and Levi sitting at the table surrounded by textbooks and papers. They're working on calculus homework and actually seem to be studying instead of just sitting close together. This is the same table where everything changed with Zachary. The same formal china is stored in the cabinet behind them. I stand in the doorway for a second, remembering that awkward meal and how it shifted the entire direction of our relationship with Harley. Levi is explaining something about derivatives, and Harley is taking notes. They look like two normal kids doing homework together. Harper appears beside me and slips her hand into mine. We watch them for a minute without saying anything. She squeezes my fingers and I know exactly what she's thinking. We got lucky. The whole situation with Zachary could have gone so much worse if Harley had refused to see reality. If she'd committed to that relationship out of stubbornness or rebellion, we might still be fighting. Instead, one creative intervention gave her the space to make her own choice. Harper leans her head on my shoulder, and we stand there feeling grateful for normal teenage problems and good kids who come through the front door. A few days later, Harley walks into the kitchen while Harper and I are making dinner. She grabs a water bottle from the fridge and mentions running into someone at the school. She says Zachary was hanging around the parking lot again trying to talk to freshman girls. Her face scrunches up in disgust as she describes watching him lean against his mom's car with that same fake confidence he used to have. She shakes her head and tells us she can't believe she ever thought he was cool or interesting. The way she talks about him now is completely different from 6 months ago, when she used to get defensive if we even mentioned his name. She sounds embarrassed but also relieved, like she dodged something dangerous. Harper catches my eye across the kitchen and I can see she's thinking the same thing I am about how close we came to losing this battle. Harley tosses her water bottle in the recycling and heads back upstairs without making it into a big conversation. The fact that she brought it up at all tells me she's completely moved past whatever hold Zachary had on her. The next week, Levi comes over after school and asks if he can talk to Harper and me together. We sit down in the living room and he looks nervous but determined. He explains that his family has a lake house about 2 hours away, and they're planning a day trip this Saturday. He wants to know if Harley can come along and his parents would be there the whole time. He promises they'd leave early and have her back by dinner. Harper asks about his parents and what they'd be doing at the lake. Levi describes his mom and dad and mentions they want to meet us first if we're comfortable with Harley going. I tell him we'd like that and we set up a time for them to come by Friday evening. When Levi leaves, I notice Harley watching from the stairs with this hopeful expression on her face. She comes down and thanks us for even considering it without launching into the usual teenage argument about trust and freedom. Friday evening, Levi's parents show up right on time. His dad shakes my hand with a firm grip and his mom brings a plate of cookies she baked. We sit in the living room and they tell us about their lake house and the activities they have planned. They seem genuine and down to earth, like people who actually care about raising their kid, right? His mom mentions that they'll have Harley back by 6 o'clock and promises to keep us updated throughout the day. By the time they leave, Harper and I both feel good about letting Harley go. Saturday morning comes and Levi's dad pulls into our driveway at 7 o'clock. Harley is already waiting on the porch with her bag and sunscreen. I walk outside with her and Levi's dad gets out to shake my hand again. He looks me in the eye and promises to have her home by dinner. Something about the way he says it makes me believe him completely. I realize standing there in my driveway that I'm not worried at all about Harley going. 6 months ago, I would have been checking my phone every 10 minutes and making Harper call to check in. But right now, I just feel calm and confident that she's in good hands. I wave as they drive away, and Harper comes out to stand beside me. She slips her arm through mine and we watch the car disappear down the street. The house feels quiet, but peaceful instead of anxious like it would have been before. They pull into the driveway at 5:45, and Harley practically bounces out of the car. Her nose and cheeks are bright red from too much sun and her hair is tangled from swimming. Levi walks her to the door and thanks us again before heading back to his parents. Harley rushes inside and starts showing us Pictures on her phone of the lake and the boat and the lunch they had on the dock. She talks about how nice Levi's parents were and how much fun she had learning to water ski. Harper scrolls through the photos asking questions, while I just watch Harley's face light up with each story. Before she heads upstairs to shower, she stops and hugs both of us. She says, "Thank you for trusting her and for trusting Levi too." Her voice gets a little thick, like she might cry, and I squeeze her shoulder. She tells us it means a lot that we let her go and didn't make it into a huge thing with a million rules. After she goes upstairs, Harper and I look at each other, and I can see we're both thinking about how different this feels from the Zachary situation. Summer arrives with hot days and fireflies in the evenings. Our family settles into a rhythm that feels right for the first time in years. Harley has her job at the ice cream shop and sees Levi a few times a week. She comes home when she says she will and tells us about her day without us having to drag information out of her. Harper and I give her space but stay involved in the parts of her life that matter. We eat dinner together most nights and Harley actually participates in conversations instead of rushing through meals to get back to her room. The balance between freedom and involvement finally feels appropriate for her age. She's growing up and making good choices and we're supporting her without smothering her. The house feels peaceful in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible with a teenager. I'm sitting on the back porch one evening after Harley goes to bed, and I start thinking about that night 6 months ago. The fancy china and the candles and the cream soda and crystal glasses at 1 o'clock in the morning. The awkward silence and Zachary's terrible table manners and the way Harley's face changed as she watched him. That dinner was one of my better parenting moments, even though it felt crazy at the time. I could have yelled or forbidden her from seeing him or grounded her for months. Instead, I created a situation where she could see the truth clearly without me forcing it down her throat. She made her own choice to end things with Zachary because she saw who he really was. That choice stuck because it came from her and not from us. Sometimes the best way to protect your kids is to give them the tools to protect themselves and then trust them to use those tools. Harper comes outside and sits beside me in the dark. I reach over and take her hand and we sit there listening to crickets and feeling grateful for how things turned